This is Nick Baldridge of the For Amusement Only EM and Bingo Pinball podcast. And when I'm not EM and Bingo Pinballing, I'm listening to the SNES podcast with Greg and George.
$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES podcast with your hosts, Soul Blazer and George.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 77 of the SNES podcast with your regular host here, Aaron. And joining me, I've got George.
Hi, this is Nick Stevens. Wait, what? Wait, what's going on?
All right. And I've got Soul Blazer. How's it going? I'm not your regular co-host. I'm actually Aaron from the Genesis Gems. And
I'm not
Retro
Nick
Obscura.
Stevens.
No. Your voice sounds just a slightly bit different, but that's okay.
Just a slight bit different?
Just a slight bit different.
What if I call it a hot dog with sauce?
There you go.
Okay.
But we're covering... What game are we covering? I picked it. I should know.
Yes.
You don't even know.
No, I do. We're covering Brain Lord for the SNES.
What a name.
Going on the... Yeah, it's not on the SNES Mini, so look it up.
No, I guess I'm not buying it then.
Well, actually, Aaron, you actually read my mind there for like a little bit because this is old news by now, but we have to talk about this given the Super NES podcast, but people are going to lynch us. I was just waiting to discuss this like you were on the podcast actually, so you could add into it like your own thoughts. But yeah, we should talk about the Super NES Mini like a couple minutes.
Sure.
It's a pretty good selection of games, I think. Just like the NES Mini, I think it's it's a very good lineup. So everybody probably knows the details like by now. Planned for release like on September 29th for $80. It's $20 more than the NES Mini was, but it also comes with 2 controllers like in the box, so that's like good. That's the reason for the higher price point. But the real shocker is that something I never thought they'd. Yeah, the real shocker is it's like Nintendo's it's like something that they never do. They're pulling into their unreleased archive and putting an exclusive game on this console, never before officially released anywhere in the world. Star Fox 2.
Didn't they also actually finish it as well?
Well,
so this is the most complete version because the one floating around the web that
it's like a prototype or something.
It's a prototype and it's not I think the final product was about, according to Dylan Cuthbert from Argonaut, he said it was about 98% done. It'd gone through Nintendo QA.
Correct.
So the version that Nintendo's actually releasing will feature roguelike elements that were not in the prototype version that's out there that you can play right now. So I'm definitely looking forward to Nintendo putting it out. And I'm sure what will happen is someone will reverse engineer the SNES Mini just like they did with the NES Mini, and they'll be able to extract the ROM out.
No.
I'm sure if it's anything like the NES Mini, hackers will take it apart and figure out that it's like an ARM processor. I forgot exactly what it was, but it's like an Android-based Tegra thing.
Yeah, it was something like that. I think it might have been an ARM. I could be wrong, but it was something like that. It was almost like the whole thing was almost like a Raspberry Pi type thing, which is really interesting.
Yeah, but high quality. High quality, they were sure. So that was like the plus thing.
Are you saying Raspberry Pi is low quality?
No, I'm just saying like like better than Raspberry Pi, like from all accounts, because they can know. Like,
I think he's insulting the Raspberry Pi, Aaron.
It's all right.
Okay,
so I guess the bottom line on this the SNES Mini is I think we're all kind of excited for it. There's a great lineup of games on the system.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's just going to be a whole supply and demand issue like with the NES Mini. Hopefully not. But I think the game selection is pretty solid as far as RPGs and action and other games go. I mean, there's still
Nintendo actually. I think they actually said something about like they stopped doing the NES Mini because what is it called again? I forget. Whatever it is. I think they stopped doing that because they wanted to make sure they had enough SNES Mini classics, whatever it is. I think that's what they said.
Which doesn't make any sense, but that's Nintendo for these days.
I mean that's Nintendo speak for you.
Right.
Yeah.
But out of the release games on there, what's your favorite, guys?
Well, let me just go down the list like real quick here for people like you don't remember. There's 21 games included besides Star Fox.
That's me.
Star Fox 2 like being one of them. The games are Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart, Zelda: Link to the Past, F-Zero, Super Metroid, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Punch-Out, Super Castlevania 4, Donkey Kong Country, Mega Man X, Kirby Superstar, Final Fantasy VI, which of course releases Final Fantasy III back in Super NES, Kirby's Dream Course, the original Star Fox, Yoshi's Island, Super Mario RPG, Contra 3, Secret of Mana, Earthbound, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts. So,
pretty solid.
Yeah, pretty solid.
No Chrono Trigger.
Nope.
No
Chrono Trigger and no Final Fantasy IV, which I think should have been included also. I mean, they got 6 on there, so why not 4? I mean, I personally have always loved 4, even played a bit more than 6, like, even though 6 is also like a great game in its own right. So, and I would love to see ActRaiser on here too. I mean, like, I understand that not everybody has the love for that game I do, but Aaron, that was one of the episodes that you had.
Yes. It's one of the best NES games, period.
Yeah,
and there's no Soul Blazer. There might have been a rights issue. I don't know if Square owns the rights to those games or if it's owned by.
The games on here, I'd argue, is Super Ghosts and Ghost is a launch. It's not launch.
I think it's a great title, but it suffers from slowdown.
It does. It has some problems. And 2 Kirby games. I'm not sure.
And like, why would you do Street Fighter 2 Turbo and not Super Street Fighter 2?
Yeah.
A lot of people would argue, and I could be getting this wrong, but as far as I know, some people would argue Turbo's better.
Yeah, Turbo seems to be the favorite for people when it comes to home versions. I understand it's controversial, but I think that's probably why I got the nod. But
Amy all day long.
But yeah,
I'm not good at those games.
But yeah, nitpicking titles. I mean, like Donkey Kong Country 2 is arguably better than Donkey Kong Country 1.
Oh yeah.
Mega Man X2 is arguably better than Mega Man X1.
But I think overall,
games,
it's still a better pick. I mean, most of these make more sense than some of the games they picked on the NES.
Right.
Where it's like, you know what, I could have picked at least a half a dozen to a dozen games to slot in for some of these that made it on. And I understand, they want to they included most of the black box titles on the NES Mini, even the ones that weren't super great. But there were a few weird inclusions, like, why would you only put Double Dragon 2 on here? Or, things like that. Why would you only put the first Dragon Warrior on here when it's like 3 and 4 are leagues better and 2's decent? So, and like on the SNES Mini, there's whole genres of games not represented at all. Like, Greg, one of your favorites, simulation games, none. There's no Koei games. There's no, like Civilization. There's no Super Conflict. Now, of course, some of these games will not appeal to everybody. So, thinking about Nintendo, maybe the only inclusion I would think that they should have put on at least was SimCity. Yeah. Considering that they developed it.
Yeah, it's probably right issues for that, because looking down this list, third-party companies. There's only 3 companies three companies work like reflected here on the system: Capcom, Konami, and Square Enix. So I mean, and to be fair, there was also the NES Mini also had heavy lineups like those companies as well. So they may not have wanted to try to. They may already be limited to licensing agreements that are already in place with these companies. They may have signed the license way back when to the Super NES at the same time as the NES Mini, and so they were just trying to keep this under wraps. And it's quite after the NES Mini had come and gone.
Yeah,
could be.
So one other fun fact I thought about was the fact that I really wish the NES Mini they would have gone, hey, we're sitting on a few unreleased games here, because they were. Yeah. Nintendo could have put Earthbound Beginnings, which they finally did release. They should have put it on the NES Mini, I think. Absolutely.
Right.
They also
that would have been a good pick, yeah.
Yeah, and they also have a fully completed NES version of SimCity sitting in the vaults.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have a fully complete version of SimCity on NES.
That'd be really cool to see.
I thought that would be cool, but of course, if Maxis has the rights, or I guess it's EA now.
Maxis. Yeah. What is this Maxis you speak of?
No more. Now
EA definitely has the rights, and I'm not going to license it out. Like, no way.
EA really cannibalizes everything they have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, or makes it always online.
That's a whole... that's another episode.
It's another episode. We're talking about Rainlord today.
Yes, we are. Speaking about Square Enix. Yeah, speaking about Square Enix, this is an Enix game. Technically. It's published by Enix. It's developed by a small company called Produce, which looking at the list of games they made, this is a pretty good company. Produce was around from 1990 until about sometime around, I couldn't find the exact date that they went defunct, but it looks like they went defunct around the early 2000s. Is when they stopped developing games. It was made up mostly of some former REM employees. Another one of the companies that ex-REM people had made back when the arcade market crashed. It developed games primarily for Enix and Hudson Soft, and their games appeared in the Super NES and the Nintendo 64, PlayStation, and PC Engine. And they mostly did role-playing games. George, they also developed a game, and also I was going to bring this up anyway because this game ties very heavily with this one as well. But they developed a game that we've already covered in the podcast previously, Seven Saga.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, these games actually look pretty similar.
Well, the reason I like this one a bit more. But they also developed the Super Bomberman series. Well, a lot of the games, the Super Bomberman series, they did, and they also did Super Adventure Island, just like the Super NES. So, mostly RPGs, for the exception of those games. So
they did one fighting game on the N64. I saw Dual Heroes.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Which I know nothing about. So
is that a good game?
If memory serves me, it was one of those kind of mediocre fighting games.
There were
like George. A dime a dozen on the N64. I mean, the N64 controller just really stinks for most fighting games, and so it does not surprise me.
The N64 controller stinks in general.
It's good for,
as somebody who plays a decent amount of N64, let's get this straight. I actually own multiple N64s, and I like the console. That controller is not so great.
It's not the worst controller, but it's not my favorite either.
I think, so the main problem, we'll get back to the game, is just, I think the main problem is the C buttons. I think they should be the same size as the other buttons, or it should just be a second stick, which they later...
It's also not a really ergonomic fit. I mean, holding the controller is awkward because of how you make sure to put your hands.
It's kind of weird that you're kind of stuck with, you pick the middle grip or you pick the left grip.
Right.
See, my hands are big enough so that I can use the grips on either side and play almost any game that way.
Weird.
Is that weird?
But you are a person, Yeah, well, George, you're also one of the few people I know of who actually could actually use the original Duke style Xbox controllers too.
Oh, and I do. The only problem I have is the almond-shaped buttons are way too close to each other. Well, also they feel terrible, those face buttons. But anyway, that's too modern. We're talking about brain load here.
Yeah, and
Yes,
Aaron.
and what is Brain Lord? I mean, what does that even mean?
I don't know. I didn't ask you if you knew
Lord
that. But Aaron, you did make a good point earlier. That like how similar this game is to Sem Saga. Like in hindsight, people have lumped those two games together along two other games that came after this as part of the so-called Mystic Arc franchise. Because all four of those games share a lot of similarities. A lot of the same gameplay, some characters repeated. From all the games. They're all developed by the same company, produce. So there's definitely some strong similarities between Seven Saga, Brain Lord, and the two games that came after, which were Japan only. Mystic Arc and the sequel, Mystic Arc Maruroshi Agaiku, I think, which was a PlayStation game. Yeah. So there's definitely looking at those two games. There's definitely similarities between them. But thank God this game went on difficult as Seven Saga is, because oh boy.
Yeah.
Seven Saga was just impossibly difficult. It was one that I owned as a kid. I only ever, I think we borrowed Brain Lord, but I owned Seven Saga. I got it from a pawn shop. And I just remember thinking this game's pretty cool. The music's decent. And then you get to you get ground into dust basically.
It's a grindy game.
It is
so grindy.
Yeah.
And there's enemies that you can fight that just wallop you super early on. You're not grinding.
Yeah.
right.
I didn't feel that way with this game. This game,
Right.
it felt like the pace was just about right.
So what's your history like this game, Aaron? What do you want to cover?
Yeah, so I think it was... So the game came out in 1994.
Yep.
And I want to say...
Well, it got released in Japan in January '94, and it got released in North America in October that year. Like many RPGs at this time period, this game never got a power release. So it was Japan and North America only.
We borrowed it from someone along with, I think, Lamborghini Challenge, and I think we ended up with...
say you borrowed somebody's Lamborghini.
Wish! I would be on this podcast right now.
You had a really good childhood.
Had a Lamborghini. Jeez. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I played it about a year after it came out, I want to say. We borrowed it from a friend. I had no idea what the game was going to be like. I'd already played, Zelda, Link to the Past, and some Soul Blazer, and I think Illusion of Gaia. So playing it, the style was already kind of familiar, but I actually enjoyed it. I was like, wow, this game has a jump button. The story is not super convoluted to where you feel like you get super lost. It's pretty grounded, and you're just kind of like a random... he does have a name, but you're a hero in the game. And I just named him Aaron because I can.
I think his name is Remus or something.
Yeah, and you're kind of like a mercenary, aren't you?
Yeah, the story of this game is simplistic, like Aaron said, but it's pretty much been there, done that, but the content of the game, it works. It's your typical kind of fantasy plot, about how, you're descendant to, Lion Dragon warriors, and your father left years ago to explore a tower and never came back. It's like you're trying to find out what happened to him.
Oh, yeah.
So you're doing with some friends. You get the Kishin, who's a bounty hunter, Barnus, who's a spiritual guru, Rain, a warrior, and Ferris, a witch. So they help you at various times. You go to the 5 dungeons, in the land, and there's a little bit of town stuff in this game. There's 2 towns.
There's a sense of humor, which wasn't in a lot of RPGs. It's kind of lighthearted. And,
the time period, the translation was very good, I thought. There's that. I noticed they could do a couple small errors. So
I think one of my favorite things was you walk up to you can destroy pots and stuff with it once you get an axe.
Yes.
The one thing I noticed was that there's a place in the first town you can go to where the lady's like, "Oh, I hired that witch to clean out my attic because there was an infestation, and she set fire to my whole attic."
Yeah.
Or the fact that the blonde-haired guy you think would be this awesome swordsman is a total weakling.
Yes.
I think it's really cool though. You never truly feel alone in the game in the dungeons because most dungeon crawlers, you get to a dungeon or something and it's you pretty much. But in this game, it's almost like they're always one step behind or one step ahead of you, these characters. And, you get to these dungeons and you can, there is an overworld kind of like Zelda, but there isn't a huge emphasis on the overworld. It's pretty much just like a pathway with a few enemies to your next stop. Yeah. Right. And once you're in there, it's a pretty sprawling thing. Like the first tower you get to is like 4 floors, but they're giant floors with tricks and traps and different things, basically.
Yep, that's a very good way of describing the game. I was reminded strongly, like I said this off mic also, playing this game, this is the first time playing it, by the way, for the podcast, I was reminded strongly this game is a cross between the Legend of Zelda and Soul Blazer, because the corporate elements like in both games.
Did you have a charge meter? I know you did have a charge meter in Zelda, but I like in this game that the charge meter kind of gives you different abilities depending on what you select.
Yeah, different spells you can get.
Yeah. Yes.
And each spell has like a different... Like, I think the more powerful it is, the longer it takes to charge.
True, yep.
And those bosses, jeez. Okay, we'll talk about the bosses later, but...
there's also like a wide variety of weapons that you can also use like in this game, which is nice. Bows, boomerangs, swords, axes, flails.
You will flail.
Yes, and you should be warned.
Okay.
There is a heavy emphasis on puzzles like this game. Some very difficult puzzles. Also, I mean, there's some very simple Zelda like push a block and a passageway opens up kind of like thing. But later on, they get hair point difficult.
It's like every. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the thing is, this is kind of what you were talking about, Aaron, where you have these people sometimes in some spots they'll actually kind of help you with a puzzle or something. It's not too often, but it still gives you that sense of you're kind of not alone. Although, they don't do too much. They're just strewn about in the dungeon, and you'll find them. And sometimes they'll like sell things to you, or they'll buy things off of you. But I don't know. I'm kind of half and half on that.
Yeah, or they're kind of parked out by a save point or by one of the... there's an HP MP recovery fountain, which is a godsend in this game. You really do need that at certain points because of the different traps that can tick away at your health bar. But it is nice that you can buy items that will recover that, and you can get better armor and get better weapons. I always found myself using the projectile weapons a lot more, especially that boomerang. Oh man, it was so much better.
It makes it easier.
Sword.
Yes.
Yeah, so much easier.
So that's basic. That's the basic gameplay. Just like like we said, it's an action RPG, which you're going around, spending more time in dungeons.
Lots of keys.
Yep.
Lots and lots of keys, and that feeling of almost like when you played Resident Evil for the first time, where it's just like, oh man, how am I going to solve this puzzle? What's this riddle? What is this?
So many zombies.
Right.
Oh, wait.
That's later on. Or there's a light puzzle as you get into the underground ruins, or these conveyor belts. This game kind of plays with like. What time period is this, Oh, yeah. It plays with different elements are a strong factor in this game.
Right.
But, actually, like, the fighting in this game is pretty decent, I would say.
No, it's not bad.
It's not bad. I kind of wish that your character leveled up, too. But I understand that they kind of put that into the weapons, and then you can level up your familiars, which we haven't talked about yet. You can have 2 sprites at once, and they do different things. Like there's one sprite that actually lights up dark areas. There's another one that's just kind of like an attack sprite. There's a fire and ice and lightning sprite. And they level up, and as they get stronger, some of them get better abilities. So it can be pretty handy, and they definitely saved my life, especially when you get to an area where it's like one tick of your health bar left, and they can kind of go out and attack the enemy so you don't have to die, because they're pretty much invincible. I
honestly wish that the whole leveling system was applied to your character as well.
Yes.
Because so like the way I feel about games is weird, but this is one of those games where I don't really like the mechanics of having to get better equipment, and you're not getting better, like your character's not getting better themselves.
It's just kind of static, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't mind games like that. There are, specific types of games where, like, that's kind of the point, is going out and getting better equipment and everything. But this game feels like it kind of suffers from it.
Yeah, your experience is basically the gold you get, right?
Right.
Yes.
But you can also easily lose that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your sprites gain experience, like I was saying. The enemies will randomly leave behind these blue XP orbs that you can use to power them up. And yeah, it's kind of an awkward system. Like George said, I wish it was more elegant. I wish it was more direct, like many other RPGs. I mean, I appreciate the fact that the developers are trying to go for something different. Because I don't think the system's been used anywhere else. I mean, at least on any games I played. So on one hand, I give them credit for doing something unique. On the other hand, I'm like, it doesn't really work all that well. I mean, it's kind of clunky.
Yeah, it's a little clunky, a little dated, but it's still pretty decent. Two other games that the gameplay kind of reminded me of with the puzzle elements and just like the perspective was, for some reason, with all the moving platforms, it made me think, and the endless pits, it made me think of Gremlins 2 on the NES.
Oh, yes, okay.
And then also Star Tropics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
I could see this game feeling a little more like Star Tropics, especially with the different projectile weapons you can use, than even Legend of Zelda.
Well, they couldn't use yo-yos because that's copyrighted in Canada.
True, it would be a Magic Star or something.
Yeah, whatever it is. Island Star or whatever.
Island Star, which they renamed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about most of the major gameplay elements. There is one additional feature that you can access late in the game if you want to. The second town in the game, because there's only 2 towns, but the second town, Toronto, has a battle arena which you can use to fight in. To fight in to gain money, and you can also bet on fights going on there. So that's a nice touch.
Speaking of Canada,
bum fights.
Sorry.
Oh, I said bum fights. What kind of fights are these?
Just watching 2 people go at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. So
I didn't make it that far. I'll be honest. I made it to about the end of the abandoned ruins. Is where I ended up.
Okay.
That's kind of about right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you got to the end of the second dungeon. The 5 dungeons in the game that are called the Tower of Light, the Ancient Ruins, the Ice Castle, Droog Volcano, and Platinum. So you made it to the end of that dungeon too.
Droog Volcano, is that like a reference to Clockwork Orange?
Because I think it's spelled
Droog is it's like a Russian word or something, but it's definitely a word they use in a Clockwork Orange.
Could be. Don't know.
I wouldn't know either.
Yeah.
But yeah, the environments are varied in this game. I will definitely give it that. The graphics are pleasant enough. I will say that the character sprites kind of look a little generic, but the graphics overall are pretty decent.
Yeah, the graphics has a very generic Enix feel to it, I think, because a lot of companies like this time period, you could tell, for example, a Capcom game or a Konami game or Sunsoft game just looking at it because of the graphical tricks and tactics that they used. And Enix Super NES games, I like it the same way. I mean, you can tell ActRaiser, Soul Blazer, Seven Saga, whatever. Just the graphical tricks that they use. Even though they published some of these games, developing them themselves, they still kind of had a similar look and feel to it. So yeah, graphically, this game does look and feel a lot like other Super NES Enix games. But
it's not bad or anything. It's definitely serviceable. But the music was great. I liked the music a lot.
The soundtrack was excellent. Yeah, this is a very good soundtrack.
Very catchy.
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, that composer's worked on quite a bit of other games. I think they worked on Cybernator, another great Super Nintendo game.
Yeah.
I think I think Seventh Saga, maybe some Mystic Arc. I know they've worked on some other things too. So this was Masano Akahori, about as good as I'm going to pronounce it.
Close enough.
Yeah, better than I can do, so that works.
But it was interesting how the development of the music was separate from the development of the actual game, to where it's like they had a separate company that they contracted out to do music.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like when you look at the title screen of the game, there's 3 different.
Oh yes, okay.
There's Enix, and then there's Produce,
right.
and then there's one other company, Opus. Yeah, and then they do like sound effects and stuff as well. But I'm looking at other games they've done. They did stuff. Apparently, they helped develop the unreleased Ninja Gaiden on Sega Genesis. Never came out.
Oh.
Ah, okay, all right.
But they did stuff for Game Boy, for NES. Oh wow, they did sound design for BioForce Ape, which also never came out.
Wow.
Magic Darts. I'm looking at their SNES stuff. If I can find it real quick, because they did a lot of music for SNES games. I'm trying to find one that you guys might have heard of, because most of these are Japanese. I actually had GP1, Ranma 1/2, Nosferatu, which this composer did the music for. Yeah, so Super Back to the Future 2, wow.
Okay, wow.
They're pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, how would you describe the music in this game? I would say it's definitely upbeat and catchy, and more driving, like funky and driving rock sound, atmospheric rock, as opposed to symphonic sounds you would hear in like Final Fantasy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, making the comparisons. The soundtrack reminded me a lot about the soundtracks that Seventh Saga and Soul Blazer had. Just kind of a very similar feel to it. So, very good music. Definitely very fitting with the dungeons, I thought. You just kind of have to keep your entertained, especially when you're trying to beat your head against trying to solve a puzzle for the 10th time, trying to figure out how the heck.
I want the game facts.
Solve it. So
I definitely want the game facts on this one for at least one puzzle where I was just like, what do I do here? Or like when you enter
I feel like you're gonna have to.
Yeah, no, I get it definitely, because I was playing this game on time crunch because I wanted to get it done before we recorded, which I was able to do, but I made heavy use of both save states and save states and walkthrough doing that.
Yeah.
So because just like I gave this puzzle, I pretty much had a rule where I was going to get the puzzle 2 times to try it, and if I wasn't making any progress after the second time, then I was like giving up looking at it, and that worked pretty well.
Yeah, and so like the different puzzles I could describe are, of course, the moving block puzzles, and then you'd have like these boulders that have minds of their own that kind of follow you around.
Oh.
That track to you. Oh, those would be so frustrating. And then just regular boulders where they will keep rolling until they hit a wall. And so I remember this one room where you'd like try to move these statues around and get them on the plates, and then you'd have to arrange it just right so the boulder would crash to the back of the room, and then another boulder would crash in front of it so you could get through the door.
Could you imagine doing this in real life?
No, you'd be dead. You'd be so dead.
Yeah,
but I did like that there are secrets that you can find in each area of the game. Like, I did find out that you can... There's a few rooms that have a hidden back, and the big thing, too, is when you have your binoculars, which is kind of funny, your binoculars let you see the whole floor of the dungeon, and you get kind of a map. But the map actually shows you areas in the game that you might not necessarily see as you're walking around because they're kind of hidden behind a fake wall.
Right.
So there are things like you can find a money purse that will kind of slowly accumulate gold. But I think, after a while you really don't need it because you make a lot more money just killing monsters.
Right.
But I thought that was pretty neat. Did you guys notice, Greg, was there a limit to the inventory after like 4 pages or something like that.
I never got that much.
I don't think so. There may have been, but I never had that much stuff by inventory to begin with. So, I really
I was always selling my equipment. I wasn't sure if there was a limit or not.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny how everything's kind of displayed on. They could have put it all on one big screen, but they kind of shove it into 4 different sub-screens.
I'm sure there's some kind of limit, actually.
Yeah.
Because there's got to be restraints due to memory, but honestly, it seems like the inventory is pretty big.
Yeah.
Which is like
so.
unusual for these kinds of games in this era.
Right. There were. Well, there were some of the games that had some of the games that had big inventories also. But having a big inventory here was definitely helpful. But just to feed off what Aaron said though, I didn't find all this hidden stuff. I did find some of it, and I really love a game that encourages like exploration like that, because like this is not an original thought. If I have somebody else say this, it's like the first time playing Super Mario Bros. 3 and you discover that you crouch on a white block for 5 seconds, so you drop behind and find like hidden warp whistle. So once you find that, you find everything in the game, trying to find something else hidden. So it's like find something. So like secret stuff like that in the game is always like a wonderful thing to include. I think is like it encourages you to pay attention and like to explore and all the beaten path and whatnot, and add some additional gameplay spice to a game that might otherwise be pretty average.
Yeah, I think there's just enough variety in this game to keep it from going stale. So I will say, the later you go on, you pretty much seen most of what the game will offer you.
Right.
I would say about a third of the way through the game.
They changed it up a little bit, but
in the level design and some of the puzzles, but you pretty much figured out what the game's gonna throw at you. I was a little disappointed with the boss design, especially after playing like the Ys series and how awesome some of the bosses in those games are. The bosses in this are a little disappointing.
There's a couple of neat ideas, like some of the bosses. Like one of the bosses.
Did they get better as you go on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's one boss that looks like a giant like robotic eye, like orbs, like two orb arms that it uses to attack you.
I felt like they had so much life.
Yeah.
It took forever to kill.
The boss fights are very, very difficult in this game, especially if you don't have the right equipment.
Yeah, if you don't have the right equipment, and maybe that was my fault. I went into this boss fight, and it just felt like it took forever to chip away at his health.
Yeah, this game can be brutal in multiple ways.
Yeah. Again, Enix games seem to have very difficult boss fights. I mean, no matter what the game was, they like doing that. So, but no, I agree with you, Aaron. Some of the boss designs are definitely uninspired.
They don't really like the first boss doesn't even move around much until you like walk up to him.
Yeah,
he just kind of camps and throws out little bugs at you.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think that as far as I think the developer did strike a good balance though between exploring and solving puzzles and fighting. I didn't feel like one element was overpowering the other. The game felt like it had a good balance. I think whether or not your enjoyment of that is solely going to depend upon how much patience you have and just how much you like action RPGs to begin with. Because like I said, the game doesn't emphasize one thing over another. If you don't like puzzles, if you don't like fighting enemies, if you don't like exploring, then you're not going to like this game because this game has all three of those things in spades.
Yeah, I will say though, one thing we didn't mention was I like the shield system. I'm not a huge fan of games where like your equipment breaks down, like the shields do. But I do like that you can just buy multiple shields. I think it's cool that once you equip them, then it's like auto defend. He'll whip out his shield and defend himself, or you can just use the weapon to have it out at all times.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's a good point. I forgot about that. I think it's pretty awesome too. whichever games that have auto shield use. There's not too many games out there I can think of that do that. The only other game that comes to mind that happened with things like Morrowind.
Yeah. Yeah, games like Morrowind or Dark Souls, where there's like a lot of variety and different attack equipment and defense.
So,
Yeah, I just this whole shield thing, it's all right, I guess.
You're all right, I guess.
Well, thank you.
I think the controls seemed to handle well. I didn't have any problems with the controls. The characters felt responsive enough. Collision detection seemed to be pretty good. There were a couple of spots where I thought the weapon just hit, but it didn't make contact. But it's fairly minor gripes.
I think that's the only problem I really had was sometimes it felt like it should have hit when it didn't. But
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I thought jumping was pretty spot on, but it was just so frustrating when you had two moving platforms, and it's a game where you can only Star Tropics, where you're only moving in really 4 directions. You can't move diagonally in this game. The enemies can. That can get a little frustrating, especially when you're trying to jump from. No, actually, you know what? I take that back. I think you can. You can jump diagonally, can't you? But it seems like it's a little trickier.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It feels like you might be able to jump diagonally, but I don't know that you can move diagonally reliably.
Yeah, that might factor some of the puzzles later on. I'm trying to remember. I kind of breezed through those puzzles as fast as I could.
Yeah, I don't remember being able to really jump diagonally though. I know you can move diagonally.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But and as far as an action RPG goes, I thought the length of this game was somewhat short compared to some other games like its ilk. I put in about 6 hours. 6 hours this game would help, admittedly, but we were talking about off mic. It looks like the fastest complete walkthroughs of the game that people get on YouTube without any tools as to whatnot. It's about 2 hours, 2 hours 45 minutes, playing the beginning to end. So if you know what you're doing, you can get through the game pretty fast.
Yeah, it's not a very long game, but it's a meaty package. It's got plenty of good gameplay in it, I think. And for people that are looking for an action RPG that's not going to overwhelm them with story, but has some fun little puzzle elements to it, kind of maybe a Lufia 2 type game, I think they'd enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I hadn't thought about that. EGM said pretty much the exact same things as you did, Aaron, back when
because I wrote that review. I'm just kidding.
Oh, man.
I was only 10.
Well, there wasn't very much coverage of this game when it came out. This game is definitely obscure, which we'll get to later on with pricing, like an eBay. But there's really only 2 reviews of the game I could find from magazines back in the day. One of them being from EGM, but that would be from Nintendo Power, and Nintendo Power just simply give the game a score without really talking about it. IGN was really the only one who didn't say anything about it. They said it struck a very nice balance between action RPG elements, and because of that balance, we have appeal to players of both genres. And they also praise the music. The music being one of the best soundtracks out there, the system. They gave it 7.4 in tech.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And Nintendo Power gave a 3.5 out of 5. So, good scores. But not great, but good scores. I pretty much agree with that ranking. I
would say it's about above average. It's not a must-have on the system, but there are worse action RPGs for the system by far.
Oh yeah, I think Soul Blazer is a better game than this. But
of course you do.
But I have nostalgia that title too, but
your name's not Brainlord, so that would be great if it was.
that would be pretty good, actually.
I took the name mostly because it was a very unique name. I thought not because I love the games, because I think the game's only average, but I think that I definitely was reminded of both Soul Blazer and Zelda playing this game a lot. But yeah, I think that the game does strike a good balance. And anybody who likes action RPG games definitely should check this game out, because typically, like we said, it didn't get very much notice. It didn't have a big print run. I never heard of the game. I don't think I ever mentioned it.
I was stuck between two B games. Both were pretty obscure for the system. It was either Brainlord or Brandish.
Brandish I've least heard of, but Brainlord I never heard of. And again,
I got the two confused actually when I was going to go play them at first. I was like,
I was gonna say it's not a very. George, we've heard this probably before in the past. She's not a very Teflon name. It doesn't really stick very well.
No, and the cover art
Street
is
Combat? Or was it Combat Street? Which one was it again?
Street Combat.
Yeah.
That Rama 1/2 reskin.
My favorite part is how the resolution is coded in incorrectly.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, but I was gonna say the cover art of Brainlord is like the most nondescript. Oh, let's just put a tower in the sky and have some lightning pop out.
It
sounds like
the worst
sounds
cover
like a Final Fantasy type of thing.
Yeah, I mean it looks fantasy enough, but it's like
Yeah.
it gives no details on how the game will play. As far as you know, it could be a Tetris clone.
You know what? I probably would have enjoyed this game a lot more if it was a Tetris clone. And I'm not saying I didn't like the game, it's just like, I like Tetris.
Have you played Poy Tetris?
I need to get it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Well, we covered a Tetris-like game recently, like when we was on a podcast, like Pack Attack. So, but
Yeah.
But,
you guys have to cover Tetris and Dr. Mario.
Never played that one actually, which is strange to be saying that because I like both those games like individually, but no, never played the mashup.
Tetris is way better, but Dr. Mario is still cool.
Yeah,
Dr. Mario's fun, like for sure. But yeah, so I guess we into our closing thoughts here. At the very least, the soundtrack is worth listening to. But you're not like a fan of the genre. This is this is a very underrated soundtrack. I really don't know how many people have heard the soundtrack before. So definitely, so at the very least, like enjoy Superman's music, check out the soundtrack. It's very good. But yeah, I think that. Like Aaron said, I think this is a very good game that balances action RPG elements. It's not the best action RPG game in the system, but it's certainly a good one.
It's solid.
Yeah, it's a solid game. It's worth playing at least once. Like most games of this type, the replay value is almost nil, so once you actually beat it once, you're probably not going to want to get back to it. And the story is very, very average. It's like, it doesn't get any interesting. The story does not get any more interesting as the game goes on either. So it's like, it's all pretty typical stuff. I'd say probably the story and like some of the very difficult hair-pulling out bosses and puzzles are probably the game's weakest points. But if you have patience and you're willing to like put the time into it, you come with the game having like a fun time. Like, I don't know how much of the game you're gonna remember in like 5 years, but for the here and now moment, it's fun to play.
Yeah, I think that's like the final verdict. It's a fun game. I would say for the writing is definitely above average.
Yeah,
and probably better than the story itself. Yeah. The characters are a little, some of them are two-dimensional, but they've got some flair and there's some comedic touches to everything. So I definitely enjoy that because Rain is a total jerk and he's really just in it for himself, and he's just tagging along for the ride until he gets to marry his girlfriend in Toronto. Which is the name of the second town.
Yes.
Right. Toronto. Yeah, no, I don't think I enjoyed this game as much as you guys did, but there's definitely something there. It kind of feels the same the more you go on with it. Although, I mean, it does change up a little bit, but it just doesn't feel like it changes enough.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. Also,
So,
like
Bragg,
those
when do you need
puzzles.
a new co-host to replace George?
Whoa. Whoa.
I'm totally kidding.
Well, I mean, that means the SNES podcast won't come out in years then. That means you'd have to edit it.
I take it all back.
Yeah. your co-host and Genesis Gems, they have a conflict of interest problem with you, like, you know, being the podcast of the competing 16-bit platforms of the time period. So
I know, but our beef is
He'd
with
be
two
angry
dudes in a
that he'd
nest.
be on the better podcast.
Dude, our beef is with two dudes in a nest, not with SNES podcast. It's just kind of funny how that worked out.
yeah, well,
Right.
yeah. Besides nowadays there's no beef. It's all like, you know, this is all like retro games. You can all look at it objectively, like, and see the good and the bad stuff like in every system. So, I mentioned pricing earlier. This game is fairly uncommon. There are copies available on eBay. The pricing, I think, is reasonable. It's more expensive. It's more expensive than usual because it is a role-playing game. A role-playing game, you tend to hold their value like pretty well, but it's not as expensive as it would be if the game was like more popular, like more well-known. I think, based upon games we looked at previously in this podcast. If we have copies of the game currently on sale for eBay, 41 copies have sold recently. Card only can range anywhere from $17.50 to $32, and this price is include shipping.
Which for SNES, that's not terrible.
That's not
Considering
bad,
how
yeah.
overinflated most games are. So-
Yep.
Yeah.
CIB is $36.50. Check the $50. Again, not bad.
No.
And there's even a steel copy of the game that sold recently for $150.
No, thank you.
But this game has never gotten re-released as part of any of the collections. And like I said, it was only North America and Japan only. Power users never saw it. So the only way you can play the game is either through emulation, like you were buying a cart. So, is it worth $17.50? That depends. That depends. That depends on how much of an action RPG fan that you are. I think. If you are a fan of those games, it's worth the price. You really don't need the manual to figure things out. It helps, but there are walkthroughs online, spoiler-free walkthroughs that also can tell you the critical manual information to help you out. So,
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with that. I don't know.
But do you have this copy? I'm sorry, Aaron. Do you have this game? I know you have some Super NES games. Is one of the ones you have?
No, I'm trying to recall. I don't think I ever owned it, to be honest. I think we just borrowed it. And then I had a SNES copier. I had a backup device at one point. And I know I had it on there on a diskette.
You're ruining yourself.
I am. I had a ton of SNES games on diskettes, like I was loading up on Amiga or something.
I remember those. The first
Super Wildcard DX32 is what I had.
By late 90s, I remember those.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm pretty sure I played it on there, but no, I've not owned this. I do have an SNES again. It's a different Super Nintendo, but I've only got a handful of titles. I can list them right now. I think I've got Mario Paint. I did have Chrono Trigger.
Best game ever.
I had to sell that. I had. I have Ultima. Runes of Virtue. No. It was Ultima.
That's Ultima 4, I think.
No, I think it was Ultima the False Prophet or Ultima.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't that. It was the Runes of Virtue 2 that was a better game on Game Boy, actually.
Oh,
Really?
Yes, yeah. No, I remember the Game Boy Ultimate game, seemingly very good. Super NES ones are just hit or miss.
Yeah, it's just the interface they use is just. I think they use Ultima 7's interface, but it does not translate well to the SNES.
No. Well, actually, speaking about Mario Paint, just a quick, current news thing. I saw today, Hyperkin, who I had a lot of respect for, makes do very good stuff.
Oh, they're making that SNES mouse.
They're making a mouse, yes, like the Super NES, a 2-button mouse. So,
Nice.
that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested because they're also making that, and I don't mean to get too modern here, but they're also making the original Xbox controller for Xbox One, so we'll see how the quality of the products come out. Yeah, I'm actually really interested in getting
Hyperkin stuff has gotten better in recent years. They used to have a lot of crap stuff, but their stuff but you know, it's kind of like Mad Catz in that area, because Mad Catz used to be really crap for a long time, and then recently their stuff's gotten much better. And Hyperkin's kind of the same way.
And now they're making nothing.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, because they bank all their money like a rock band.
Well, no, they're you didn't hear? They're bankrupt.
Well,
they're not a thing anymore.
That's why they're bankrupt.
Yeah, that's basically it.
But yeah, Hyperkin I have a lot of respect for, so I'm curious to see about this mouse. It's definitely a niche. It's definitely a niche product. We talked about I talked about this in the podcast. There's about maybe like 40 games that got released in Super NES during lifetime. That's for the mouse. So, one of the Genesis and PlayStation had like their mice. So
yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, that's sad.
So at least it's that going
PlayStation mouse.
But anyway, yeah. So thank you for bringing this game to my attention, Aaron. I definitely never heard of it. I was a big fan of Enix stuff back in the day. I certainly enjoyed the company. I certainly enjoyed a lot of the stuff they put out. I enjoyed a lot of the stuff they put out, like the Super NES. I for example, still enjoy like EVO a lot. Even though I recognize the game.
That was a sequel. Most people don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of
sequel to a game that's actually recently translated. So.
Yeah.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear about that part. That's cool. I'll check that out now. But EVO has its problems, but it's still a really fun and neat game for sure. So, so I definitely, there's a number of Enix and SquareSoft games and whatnot that fell through the cracks for one reason or another. For like me, I really love the games the company had. Would I enjoy this back then? I don't know, because I don't do very well puzzle games, and Zelda was pretty much about as tough puzzles that I got in games, but playing it now, I certainly don't regret my time with it. Like, it was a fun romp. I'm glad I had that. I'm certainly glad I had like emulation to walk through help for sure, because then it would have been much more frustrating. But yeah, it was definitely very like fun, unique game. It's certainly one of the things I love. Certainly one of the things I love about doing this podcast, helping to find this hidden titles. So
yeah, it's always nice to find something I didn't know about.
Yeah, much like Aaron does with one of his own podcasts.
I try. I try.
Well,
why don't you tell us which podcast you currently do, Aaron?
So I am on Genesis Gems with Nick Stevens. And I also host, it's been a while now, we're trying to get a show out there. I also co-host Retro Obscura currently with Daniel Tolan and Paul Stevenson, who does a show with George over on the Master System Masterpieces.
Yeah, and we covered Road Rash recently.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we've covered Road Rash 1 and 2 on Genesis Gems. So, great games.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty good port for the Master System.
Along with, I think Desert Strike was actually pretty decent on there as well.
I never played it.
It's worth checking out.
We'll get to it eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so those are my things. I am also a musician. I write music for video games and also do chiptune and play piano.
Excellent work he does.
Yes. Yeah.
Appreciate it. So my artist name is Daya, just DYA. The main projects I'm working on right now is I just put in some music for a video game coming out here pretty soon called The Bounty Deluxe, which will be out on Steam pretty soon. And I've got some music that's going to most likely be on a Sega Genesis compilation. It'll be released on a cartridge that people can buy pretty soon here, called YM 2017. YM standing for Yamaha. It's in the YM 2612 chip.
Huh. Okay.
So yeah, pretty excited about that. Hoping it was kind of a compilation, so it will be judged. But I'm pretty sure my song made it onto the compilation.
I hope so.
I hope so. The guy who ran it liked it quite a bit, so I think it'll make it on.
Did you grease any palms there, or?
Yeah, I grease all the palms. No,
Oh, okay.
I just
Wait,
say,
what about
here's
me?
my music. George, you're a very handsome fellow, and no, I don't have anything to grease your palms for right now, so.
All right, we'll talk about that later.
All right. But I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Anytime.
Talked about a pretty unknown game. I would also always recommend this site, but Hardcore Gaming 101 does have a neat little write-up on Brainlord, and I think they've covered Seven
Oh yeah,
Saga.
sure, I read about that.
Well,
Yeah. No,
so
Seven Saga.
I definitely recommend checking out that website if you wish.
Yeah. And I can definitely highly recommend like both of Aaron's podcasts. I give you some great stuff over there. I've discovered quite a few very good games because of the Retro Obscura podcast. Like really like obscure, especially it was doubly true now, but it's being like 20 years ago. There's still a lot of hidden gems coming out that just never got the attention that they should have for like one reason or another. So it's fun for the guys. So there's definitely some great work over there. So
appreciate it.
And Genesis Gems, I admit I'm behind in that podcast.
Same here.
Oh, that's okay. You can jump in wherever. It's enjoyable romp.
Yeah.
The story is different every episode. So.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I don't have the history, of course. Of course, Genesis that did the Super NES. I wrote it. I already started to play one back when it was out, and you guys have not covered yet some of my favorite games. At the system, but one of the games definitely does get covered. I'll be first over there.
Awesome.
But yeah, so as for this podcast. We are available on both the Retro Junkies and Throwback networks. Two great networks where you can find a whole bunch of retro-themed podcasts, both gaming and non-gaming related. And we're also available on iTunes. And we also have a Facebook page where you're very welcome to get your questions and comments. We recently got some suggestions, like some games to cover, and George and I are going to look at some of those like in future episodes. So any kind of feedback is very highly appreciated. If you want to, you can also email me directly at the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. George and I also do another podcast together, which is not family friendly, just as a warning. Called PlayStation Power, where we cover PS1 and PS2 games. And what are we doing next, George? Playing that podcast?
We're going to cover Okami on that podcast.
Very, very interesting game. Like, Aaron, have you played that one?
Oh, it's one of my favorite PS2 games. And I have the Wii version.
Yeah.
It's a cool game, and the HD re-release is great.
I've heard that, yeah. I definitely tend to check that out on YouTube, before we do the podcast. But I heard the remake was very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta get back to playing that. I really like how it is, but then apparently there's combat, and I don't know. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah. And George also does the Masters of Masterpieces, like as Aaron mentioned earlier, which covers Sega Master System games. What other podcasts do you currently do, George?
None. I'm not going to talk about that other one. It's a super secret podcast for super secret people. I mean, I've talked about it before. It's nothing special. Mostly we just do it for ourselves. We don't, I think we only have like 5 listeners. It's whatever. We just do it because we do it, and we just basically do it for fun. It gives us an excuse to basically for Joe and I to talk to each other. But if you're interested, it's the box where we talk about whatever. If you're easily offended, please don't listen to it. That's all I have to really say.
Okay. But Aaron, it's always great having you on the podcast. It's been a while, so thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule joining us here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks you guys for having me on. I look forward to hearing more episodes of this show and the other projects you guys are involved with.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. And it's always a blast to have you on. It's great talking to you.
Definitely.
Likewise.
So coming up next, we are continuing our guests. Our guest gracing us like this podcast. Somebody else who was right neck and neck with Aaron for most appearances in the podcast. He's been doing this again for another episode that we kind of jokingly talked about the last time he was on, but we kind of decided it wasn't the idea wasn't actually a bad one. So we're gonna have Ferg again back in the podcast to talk about this time game show translations on the Super NES. There were 3 game show games that came on the system, which, ironically enough, are still in the air today. Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and Family Feud. So we're going to be talking about those games. So we're going to be talking about those games, like those conversions of the system. Aaron, do you have any experience like those 3 games?
Absolutely. The main memory, because Jeopardy for me was NES. SNES, though, Family Feud all the way.
Yeah, it's a great title.
One I played the most on there, and just the cheesy banjo music. And the fact that you could pick from like
not a
3 stereotypical families.
Well, so, yeah.
The white family, the black family, and the Asian family. Those were the 2 white families. I think there was like the blonde white family and the ginger white family.
The staples of the United States.
That's right. We got it all covered. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I've played it even with people who aren't so much into video games. They definitely like Family Feud.
Yeah.
And it's an easy enough game to pick up and play.
Yep.
And in fact, I just played it a few weeks ago. So it's not like the best game show game, but it holds up. Some of the questions are kind of dated, but that's just how it goes.
Right, yeah, well, we have to expect that.
That's my favorite part is trying to answer dated questions.
Well, the NES is worse because the NES also has some game show conversions for game shows that have long been off the air, like Card Sharks.
I don't even know what that is.
Card Sharks? I know we had Card Sharks actually on Apple II actually.
Right. Well, I think it did. I'm pretty sure there was an NES port that they port. I know there was an NES port of the what was it called? Like When You Draw, the drawing game.
Yeah, I played that with my kids. It's so boring.
Yeah. So Anticipation though, but Anticipation is a good game, I think. But I've always liked that.
Yeah, Anticipation was a better game.
Right. So anyway, so he'll be joining us for the next episode. And there's more guest hosts planned after that. Bringing us again games we never heard of. So stay tuned for that. So Aaron, thank you again, and we should have you back at some point later on to talk about runner-up choice because Brandish also looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to have more time to actually sink my teeth into it and not trying to play 5 games at once like a podcast. So,
man,
you got it.
No.
Right.
I'll thank you guys again.
All right.
Well, thank you again.
Yep, thank you again. Thank you again, everybody out there, for listening to us again. We always appreciate it. And we will see you again soon. So take care, all.
Goodbye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Deep of power.